Jonathan York with Bay Financial Partners, looking at investment markets. COVID-19 still really dominating proceedings out there in investment markets, and it's really waging the biggest sort of battle, obviously, in the United States. With many states in lockdown and obviously, the economy sort of grinding to a standstill, you've got an unemployment level there. It's approaching now 30 million people. You haven't seen this sort of level of unemployment since the Great Depression. Also, cases have obviously increased and they're past 1 million, and also the number of deaths as well. That's past 60,000 now, which is more than the whole death toll for the Vietnam War. So you've got an economy that was obviously very successful, growing, really very strong, really just grinding to a complete sort of standstill. And this is obviously important from sort of President Trump's perspective, as you've got an election in November, and that was going to be one of his key sort of cornerstones with a strong election, low jobs, low unemployment rate, and that was really going to be centre stage for sort of pushing forward for a second term. So now you've got a bit of a battle really between sort of federal and state, whereas sort of governors have sort of ordered that states be sort of locked down and trying to contain the virus, and obviously the federal government wants to try and get it up and running as quickly as possible to get the economy going. And that's certainly causing a little bit of friction between the two. But gradually it does look as though the US is sort of gradually, sort of slowly starting to come online. It looks like California is going to have a sort of a partial sort of reopening, Georgia, and gradually these states are sort of gradually getting through. What's going to be interesting now to see is once they do start to see a gradual reopening, whether you start to see an increase in cases. In terms of cures and vaccines, certainly Gilead has seemed to have a little bit of a success in its treatment. It's not a vaccine, but it's a bit of a treatment. It certainly does seem to lessen that, so that's sort of positive. There are 3 or 4 other vaccines potentially in play as well, sort of around the world, and it's just going to be very interesting to see how they sort of progress. But then, mass scale production for them, still going to be well into 2021 before we see a vaccine. So against that sort of backdrop, global equity markets have obviously bounced pretty hard from the sort of March 23 lows. Sort of come back, and now it's just a question of seeing how the sort of reopening of the various economies go, and one on sort of cases, and then as well how quickly the economies can get back up and running. Because really it's not just a question of flicking a switch and everything's back 100%. It does take time. And so just interesting on the US election as well, the Trump administration is even talking about increasing tariffs to China now as the sort of blame game starts. Potentially this might be a little bit politically motivated, so to try and take some of the blame, because certainly the Trump administration is facing widespread criticism for its handling of the US response. Even to a stage now where they don't have a daily briefing. Elsewhere, Europe is gradually starting to come around. Italy has sort of started to relax its quarantine and lockdown restrictions. People are allowed to actually get out now. Some of the shops are starting to reopen, some of the cafes, and so it's gradually starting to sort of reopen the economy. Oil has started to creep back a little bit as well after that sort of technical anomaly where it, actually oil prices actually went negative. A little bit closer to home here, New Zealand and Australia, cases really are pretty low. New Zealand, we just had the second day where there have been 0 new cases, and now it's just a question of whether we come out of level 3 into level 2 next week. That announcement will be made on Monday, and at present it looks like all the indications are that we will go down to level 2, and that will open up the economy even further. But again, the big issue is, we're certainly with businesses finding it's certainly pretty tough after this lockdown. What sort of stimulus is going to be available? And certainly the budget now will be quite interesting to see what sort of further help is given. Because certainly at present, while the government has done a really great job of containing the virus and getting cases down, now it's just a question of saving the businesses. Interesting as well here, one of the major high street banks is actually talking about negative rates in New Zealand. That will be, they're talking about negative rates in November. Now obviously with interest rates already very low, the OCR is 0.25. Investors are already struggling with sort of term deposits that are, sort of low twos if you're lucky. The quest for income out there is going to be even greater. And if you are interested in discussing what options are available, call us on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles. We look forward to speaking to you soon.